So what's up people, and welcome to the chapter 12 and 13 discussion of Choujin X. So chapter 12 and 13 for Choujin X came out a while back, and it's currently being shown on the publisher's official website Manga Plus for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, yes, I would go take a look at it before they pull these chapters back. So chapter 12 and 13, yeah, this was a very interesting pair of chapters. It's very much into the action battles, but the type of battle is just downright weird. Now, if you recall in chapter 11, Elly and Tokio were looking for Tetsuya Shiozaki to ask him about his involvement with the bank robberies that were going on around town. And in the end of chapter 11, we saw that Tetsuya has transformed into this uncontrollable Choujin that looks like a baseball player. Now, if you recall, Tetsuya Shiozaki was a high school baseball star, and it was always his dream to be able to become a professional baseball player. And from everything that we see, a lot of the powers that these Choujins get are based upon their desires and their dreams. And so it is understandable that Tetsuya will become a baseball type of Choujin, but the way this Choujin looks is just downright weird. Now, if you recall, his power is that if he throws something at a target, that target will become a sinkhole. It will literally sink into the ground. Yeah, so he has a very strange power. And because he's going out of control, Elly and Tokio decide to confront him. And so chapter 12 becomes this chapter with regards to this battle. Now, Tokio, unfortunately, yeah, he just became a sinkhole immediately. So this turns out to be a battle between Elly and Tetsuya. And the thing I really admire about Elly is, considering the fact that she is a relatively noob Choujin, she really goes into these battles with all guns bared, with everything on the line. She doesn't hold back, and she really puts all her effort into these battles. It's really interesting to see, considering she's just a tiny looking kid. She can pack a pretty strong punch. And of course, her powers is her smoke/fire powers, and so she immediately starts using it on Tetsuya. The only problem is, since Tetsuya's power is to create a sinkhole, he can immediately make the smoke sink onto the ground by touching it. And so it doesn't do anything to Tetsuya. And so Elly comes up with an interesting plan, which is to place herself above Tetsuya and then fire her smoke from the top. In that way, even if he creates a sink, it'll just sink on top of him and cover him up. And so we could see the ingenuity of Elly. And it would have worked, except that Tetsuya threw something at the ceiling of the building, and so the entire building started crashing down on Elly. And just when you thought that everything was bad for Elly, all of a sudden Tokio does the weirdest attack and knocks Tetsuya back for a little bit of time, giving Elly the ability to get away. But in any case, yeah, things are not going well. I mean, maybe it's because Tetsuya is in this maniac, raging Choujin mode that their attacks are just not doing anything to him, and his attacks are taking them down pretty hard. But it is at this time that the cavalry comes in the form of Shimon or Simon and Michael. I'm not sure if it's Shimon or Simon, because I've seen this manga write it in both ways. But in any case, yeah, the sword dude and the Supergirl. And so they both start coming after Shiozaki or Tetsuya. And of course, since it's the sword guy, his power is to stab Shiozaki multiple times. And he uses this paralyzing blade to do so. And then Michael comes in with this amazing wrestler move and takes him out. And so, yeah, these two are a pretty formidable pair. But at the end of chapter 12, what we find is that Tetsuya isn't out yet, and he immediately makes the entire building into a sinkhole, which of course then makes the building collapse upon itself. And so we don't know what happened to everybody at the end of chapter 12, and so we have to go on to chapter 13. And what we find out is that it was a good thing Michael was there, because she was the only thing that was holding up all of that rubble that came down upon everybody's head, especially Tokio. And although Shimon or Simon has become severely injured from the last attack, he was in a seriously angry mode, and so he starts powering up. And it's really interesting because it seems like the way these Choujins power up, they literally have to injure themselves. Now this is similar to what we saw in Tokyo Ghoul, and it's also what you see in Attack on Titan, where they would actually cut themselves to be able to trigger their powers. And so by doing so, Shimon becomes a lot more powerful. He immediately starts going after Tetsuya. Now what we find out is that Elly was okay, and so she catches up to Tetsuya first, and she starts battling him again. And for a while it looks like she's ready to kind of sacrifice herself by burning both of them up, her and Tetsuya. But luckily, Tetsuya does throw her, and Tokio catches her and immediately sinks right back into the ground again. But that gives Shimon the ability to do a devastating attack using these really giant blades. But again, nothing seems to be taking out Tetsuya, and he seems to be in an extremely rage mode, and so he steps his power up once more. And this time he creates an entire sinkhole sort of situation to the ground, which starts creating earthquakes all over the place. And so Shimon is starting to realize that he may actually have to kill Tetsuya if he is going to be able to end this. Now, during this entire time, what's interesting is we're starting to see something that almost looks like clairvoyance power from Tokio. He's starting to be able to see what's going on in Tetsuya's soul. And I'm not exactly sure what he exactly saw, but he's starting to realize that maybe the only way to go after a baseball Choujin is to defeat him at his own game. And with that, chapter 13 ends with Tokio stepping up to the plate and challenging Tetsuya to a one-on-one pitcher against batter. And so this is a really interesting set of chapters. We've seen some very intense battles that Sui Ishida has written in Tokyo Ghoul, but in Choujin X, they go completely into some very unique creativity. They're using powers in the very strangest ways. And it's kind of interesting to see this story so far hasn't been anywhere near as violent or as bloody as Tokyo Ghoul, but it has been very, very weird, and not in a bad way. And the creativity that you see in these battles is very, very interesting. So I am looking forward to seeing what Tokio will do and how this battle will end. But we will have to wait until chapter 14 to see how this goes on. And once 14 and 15 comes out, I'll bring out another video. But that is the chapters 12 and 13 discussion for Choujin X. Thank you very much for listening, and hope you join me in my next episode. And until then, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.